Have you ever felt like the world is trying to silence you? Like every step forward is met with darkness, doubt, and fear? What if the moment you think you cannot go any further is actually the moment that will change everything? Stay with me, because today, I am going to show you why your biggest struggles are the very fuel to make an impact that no one will ever forget. The rain hit the pavement like shattered glass. Cold drops stung his skin as he walked alone through the empty alley. Streetlights flickered overhead, casting trembling shadows on the walls. Each step echoed like a heartbeat, loud, unsteady, full of dread. He had left the comfort of safety, of silence, of staying small, because something inside refused to stay quiet any longer. The world around him was dark, damp, and unfamiliar, but his purpose was louder than the thunder crashing above. He had failed before. They had laughed at his dreams. They told him to stay in his place, to be realistic, to give up. And for a while, he listened. For a while, he believed them. Until the day he stood in front of the mirror and saw a stranger. Eyes dull, voice weak, soul caged. That was the moment everything changed. Not with a roar, but with a whisper. I will not disappear. Now, walking through fear, through judgment, through storms, he kept moving. Because comfort never changed the world. Comfort never shook the ground or made history. He reached the door, an old, rusted warehouse with broken windows. Inside waited the crowd, the challenge, the eyes of those who doubted. His hands trembled as he pushed the door open. The air was thick with tension, heavy with doubt. He stepped inside and the room fell silent. Every face turned toward him, some curious, some cruel. His heart raced, not with fear, but with fire. This was the moment that would define him, not because it was easy, but because it was hard, brutal, necessary. He took a breath, sharp like glass in his lungs. The light above buzzed and flickered, casting his shadow across the floor. He saw a tall, defiant reel. They expected failure. They waited for him to stutter, to freeze, to fall. But he remembered the mirror. He remembered who he used to be, and who he would never be again. His voice rose, steady and clear, not to impress them, but to awaken something, to remind the world that impact is not made in silence. It is made in chaos, in courage, in the choice to keep standing when every bone wants to kneel. It is made by those who bleed, who burn, who break, then rise. It is made by you, in the moment you decide that fear is no longer your master. Not everyone will understand your path. Not everyone will cheer when you climb. But those who make an impact are not chasing applause. They are chasing meaning, purpose, truth. And sometimes that truth will come wrapped in pain. Sometimes it will come when you have nothing left but your breath. And still, you give that breath to the fight. Because if you are not here to make an impact, then what are you here for? Because if you are not here to make an impact, then what are you here for? To survive? To exist in silence while the world spins past you? To follow the path already paved by someone else's footsteps, never leaving your own behind? He stood there, heart pounding like war drums, eyes locked on the crowd. He felt the burn in his chest, not from fear, but from purpose. It was not about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving himself right. He had come too far to turn back now. He remembered the nights when sleep would not come, the nights when doubt crept in like a thief and stole his confidence. He remembered the way people spoke to him, words sharp like razors, slicing through his dreams, telling him to be small, to stay safe, to live a life already lived by others. But that was not life. That was survival. That was dying slowly, with the heartbeat still ticking. He was not born to blend into the background. He was not made to follow. He was made to lead, to fight, to stand, even if it meant standing alone. Because the world does not change with whispers. It changes with noise, with boldness, with people who are not afraid to be seen. He opened his mouth and spoke, and the first words did not shake. They soared, because they were his. Every syllable carried the weight of his journey, the weight of rejection, of failure, of isolation, but also the strength that had been forged through every one of those moments. And as he spoke, something shifted, not just in the room, but in himself. The boy who once stood in front of the mirror broken and uncertain, was no longer there. In his place stood someone unshakable, and the silence around him turned into stillness. Not the stillness of indifference, but of attention. People were listening, and not because he was perfect, but because he was real, because his voice carried pain, because his words carried scars, and scars speak louder than stories. He told them the truth, that making an impact is not glamorous. It is lonely. It is hard. It is full of sacrifice. You will lose people. You will lose comfort. You will lose time. But what you gain, what you create, can live long after you. He told them that some days he wanted to quit, that there were moments when getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain, that there were times when he stood in rooms like this and felt like a fraud. But he kept going, not because it was easy, but because he could not live with himself if he did not. And as the words left his mouth, he could feel them landing, not just in ears, but in hearts. Eyes began to change, from judgment to curiosity, from dismissal to recognition, because deep down, everyone in that room had felt it, that ache to be more, to do more, to matter. But most people buried it. They drowned it in distraction, in comfort, in excuses. And now, someone was standing before them, holding a mirror to their own silence. He reminded them that we are all running out of time, that every second we waste waiting for permission, we are losing a piece of our legacy, that the world does not need more people who fit in. It needs more people who break the mold. He told them that impact is not always loud. Sometimes it is in a quiet decision made when no one is watching. Sometimes it is in the refusal to give up. Sometimes it is in the simple act of showing up. But it must be made, because if we do not shape the world will shape us. And it rarely does so kindly. He looked around the room, saw faces that had once looked blank now filled with something else. A spark, a question, a hunger. And he realized something. The impact had already begun. Not when he walked through the door, not even when he started speaking, but when he chose to rise, when he chose to act, to defy, to move despite the fear. That is where it starts for all of us, in the decision, the one that says, I will not be silent anymore. You do not need to have it all figured out. You do not need to be fearless. You just need to be willing. Willing to step into discomfort. Willing to face rejection. Willing to keep going even when it hurts. Because impact is born in the fire, and the fire never feels safe, but it forges greatness. He finished his speech, not with a roar, but with a whisper, and the room erupted, not with applause, but with something deeper. Stillness, reflection, respect. And as he walked away, the rain still fell. The streetlights still flickered. But the world felt different, not because it had changed, but because he had. He had walked into the storm and come out with flame in his soul. And that fire, once lit, never dies. It only spreads. To every heart bold enough to carry it forward. To every voice brave enough to speak when silence feels safer. To every person ready to make their moment count. Not someday, not when they are ready, but now. Because now is the only time impact is ever made. Because now is the only time impact is ever made. He paused beneath the harsh glow of a flickering street lamp, the rain still tracing cold paths down his face. Around him, the city pulsed with indifferent noise, horns blaring, footsteps splashing through puddles, distant sirens weaving through the night air. But inside, a storm raged stronger than any weather outside. The weight of choice pressed on his chest, heavier than the rain-soaked coat, clinging to his skin. This was no longer a simple decision. This was the moment when every fear, every doubt, every scar collided with the raw, fierce desire to leave a mark on the world. His breath formed small clouds in the chill air as he exhaled slowly. Every sound around him seemed amplified, his heartbeat thundering in his ears, the steady drip of water from a broken gutter, the faint rustle of wind against cracked windows. He could almost feel the invisible eyes of the world watching, waiting to see if he would falter or fly. And then it hit him, the shock of realization, sudden and sharp like a lightning strike in the dead of night. He was not just fighting for himself anymore. Every step he took forward was a step toward those who had lost hope, for those silenced by fear, crushed by failure, ignored by the world's harsh indifference. He was their voice, their courage, their unexpected light in a long tunnel of darkness. His fingers curled into fists, nails biting into palms, to steady the trembling that threatened to undo him. The cold no longer mattered. The rain no longer felt like an enemy, but a baptism, washing away the remnants of his old self. He was breaking through, breaking free. The streets around him seemed to fade, the city noise dimming into a muffled hum. In its place rose a fierce clarity, an unyielding truth that burned brighter than any doubt. Impact was not a destination. It was a battlefield, a relentless war fought every day. It was found in the moments when the world wanted to crush you under its weight, but you stood tall anyway. He remembered the faces of those who had turned away, whispered behind his back, dismissed his dreams as foolish. Their voices echoed like ghosts in his mind, sharp and cutting. But now they were powerless, because the man they doubted was no longer hiding. He was stepping into the storm, unafraid of the lightning that threatened to tear him apart. The ground beneath him seemed to pulse, alive with possibility and peril. He took a step forward, then another, each one more confident, more resolute. The cold rain soaked through to his bones, but inside, a fire burned hotter than ever before. He was a force of nature, unstoppable, unbreakable. And then came the moment of deepest discomfort, when the storm was at its fiercest, when the world seemed ready to swallow him whole. His legs felt like lead. His breath caught in his throat. Doubt clawed at the edges of his mind like a hungry beast. The fear of failure loomed large, an unyielding shadow stretching across his soul. But he did not stop. He did not turn back. Instead, he embraced the fear, made it his ally instead of his enemy. He let it fuel him, sharpen him, push him beyond the limits of what he thought possible. The city around him blurred into streaks of light and shadow, the rain's relentless drumming a fierce symphony of survival. He was no longer just a man in the storm. He was the storm. With every ounce of strength left in his body, he roared into the night, not with anger, but with purpose. His voice cracked, raw and real, carrying a message that shattered the silence. I am here. I will make my mark. I will not be forgotten. The world seemed to hold its breath. For a moment, everything hung in fragile balance. Then slowly, something shifted. A crack in the darkness. A spark of recognition in the eyes of strangers who had gathered unseen. He was no longer alone, because impact is contagious. It spreads from one soul to another, igniting fires where there were only ashes. And as the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, painting the sky with streaks of gold and pink, he knew this was only the beginning. The journey ahead would be brutal. It would test him beyond what he imagined possible. But now, he carried something stronger than fear or doubt. He carried the fierce, unbreakable will to change the world. Not for fame, not for fortune, but because he understood the truth every great soul knows. To make an impact is to live fully, to risk everything, to rise after every fall. And when the world tries to silence you, remember, the greatest storms create the strongest trees. The darkest nights reveal the brightest stars. So stand in the rain. Feel the cold bite your skin. Let the discomfort wash over you and fuel the fire within. Because you were born to make an impact. Not someday. Not later. Now. Right here. Right now. The world is waiting. And your time is coming. So now, as the rain begins to slow and the first light of dawn breaks through the clouds, take a moment to feel the power inside you. Know this, making an impact is not about perfection or certainty. It is about courage. It is about showing up, again and again, even when the path is unclear. The world needs your voice, your fire, your story, because impact is not something you wait for. It is something you create, with every choice, every step, every breath. So stand tall, breathe deep, and step forward with everything you have. Make your mark, because this moment, this very moment, is yours to own. And the world will never be the same, because you dared to be more.